All right. Okay. Hey, mate. Wave. Right. Right. No. Let's have a look. Whoa. Don't want that. That's weird. Go live with... Hang on. Hello. Right, I'm trying to get old Josh on it. Joshy boy. Josh. I do see it. Sorry, this is my first time doing the... No. Yeah, I see it. Hang on. Go live with... Hey, Josh, request it. Por favore. Mi amigo. If you request, then I can get you on. That's how I do it. Hello, everyone. I'm just trying to get Josh on this. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, did you watch the? Got it. I think I got to add me for it to be. Josh, do a request, please. I think that's how we do it. It's going well. I should have my pal Josh Speers on in a second. Because this is our show. Oh yeah, if you watched the live stream, sorry about earlier. My phone died, and I actually got a complaint from the neighbour. Who'd have thought I sing quite loudly? So I think that's a big problem. On the coke again, Jack. You've got to fuck off, mate. Here he is, waiting for Joshua Spears.
All right,
we'll
do it this way.
I couldn't see it, bro.
I don't know how to do it.
Well, we shall we'll look at the rule book. We'll look at the rule book after this. Right. Here we are. Welcome, everyone. I've got I made a quick structure. So oh yes, mate.
Now we're in it. Hey, everybody. I'm glad there people are here.
Yeah, it's nice. We'll see if any of them can stay the duration.
We'll open up to some questions that people are going to ask, either about the book or otherwise, because I know nobody did their homework.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got the tea. Have you got a cup of
Same.
tea?
Cuppa.
Nice. Hey, that's cool. That's a cool little style you got there.
Thank you. That's one of mine.
All right. So welcome everyone to Shelf Isolation. This
episode 1.
The episode 1, the book club run by two people who've never been in a book club. And I was asking my housemates earlier, what the hell happens in a book club? And they didn't
talk about the book. You just talk about it. This is I have so many friends that have asked me to be in book clubs in the past, and I've never done it because I really want to talk about the book, and I feel like a lot of times people don't actually talk about the book. You just talk about something else. But sure. Let's talk about the book.
So let's introduce ourselves. I'm Matt from the Amazons. It's a UK-based rock band of medium success so far. And Josh Speers.
I'm Josh Speers. I'm from the rock band Josh Speers, of little to no success thus far, but working on it. Actually, there's a song that comes out tomorrow.
Good timing.
Which is all part of the plan.
What's it called?
So, it's Oh Brother. I think I played that one.
Oh, okay, yeah. Get your plug in now.
Yeah, Oh Brother comes out tomorrow on streaming platforms. There's not a music video. I actually had to kind of scramble and do it a different way. So it's a bunch of my sketches that we had animated into a video.
Yes, you sent me these the other day.
I sent you the trees. Yeah. So it's coming together. But
great.
Someone asked, "How did we meet?" We met a while ago. I remember when we first met saying, "Man, I feel like if Matt and I just had time to hang out, we would be like really good friends."
Yeah, I think I said that to someone as well. Like,
and then you came to that show at what was that Caroline Rose show at the Alexandria? Is that right?
Was it
the
Victoria?
The Victoria. That's what it was.
London, yeah.
That was great, and I feel like that was when we got our first real hang. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
There it is, and here we are. Now we're on a book club.
5,000 miles, 6,000 miles away from each other.
6,000 miles away.
Yeah.
All right, we've read up to 7, 8, 9.
Up to 7, 8, 9. The hardback and the paperback have completely different numbering, so that for me is like 80 something.
Right. All right. I'm curious about your first impressions.
Well, it's called Daisy Jones and the Six, of course.
Yep.
We're like feeling our way into this. Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's. I wanted to talk about what the book was, the premise of it, the author, and things like that, just for people who inevitably don't know.
Lay the ground.
So the book's called Daisy Jones and the Six. It's a novel published last year, actually. It's pretty recent, and it's by an author called Taylor Jenkins Reid. Are you familiar with any of her other books? I know she's done a couple.
I don't know any of the others. This is the only one I've read of hers.
Yeah, and it's basically the format seems to be like this oral history of what she kind of calls a fictional successful band of the 70s, probably one of the most successful bands of the 70s in a parallel universe. I was thinking about other oral histories that would be similar to it, and the most recent one that kind of springs to mind would be Meet Me in the Bathroom.
Definitely. Yeah, it's that kind of style. And I also think it's like, that's what makes the book so believable too, is that it came out right after that one, which of course, but there are other traditions of oral histories like Please Kill Me. Do you know that one?
That's the other one I have on my list.
There you go. That one. But then I have it sitting here on my shelf. But then also like, you know, the documentary of the Eagles, and the like 10-hour Tom Petty documentary too, that was cut down. Like, it's all that same format of like, we have the aged rock stars sitting at their couch in Malibu reliving with archival footage, which I think is great. And like, the book does such a good job of like telling the story, but jumping in between present and past, and you see how people have remembered it and what they don't remember and what they still have beef about.
That seems to be one of the themes, isn't it? In across the book, but quite subtly, because I think it's got, quite the traditional themes that you'd have with a kind of biography, the divorce.
And that's what's so cool. I think that's what's done so subtly and so well is in that first scene with Billy and Graham, the brothers, lead singer and lead guitar from the Six, disputing who wanted what guitar when they were kids. And Billy says, Graham wanted that one, so I let him have it. I kept the Silvertone. And then Graham says right after, I wanted the Silvertone, but I could tell it meant more to Billy. So that miscommunication, without saying the brothers didn't agree on everything about history, we already see the disputes, and there's the questions of who do we trust and who do we believe.
It's that concoction. It's like that recipe that is repeated in so many biographies and films and things like that. It's the success, the drugs, and like just time, basically.
Who do you believe? Like in these first couple chapters, do you like Billy Dunn, lead singer of the Dunn Brothers and then the Six?
Yeah, it depends on people's motives, really. I kind of Daisy, the main protagonist and the lead singer eventually of the band, that is the story of them being formed, is basically this story, the like rise and fall of this band.
Right.
Daisy starts like on the other side of the country. She's a Los Angeles native,
right.
and the six are obviously from your neck of the woods, Pennsylvania, Eastern kind of
the East Coast
thing. And I felt like Daisy is quite a almost like a typical Los Angeles native in that she's kind of she's got like her parents are like creative types that aren't from the city, and she's kind of been born into it, and she's been born into a life of kind of like, it's cold in terms of her family life, but she's got money and access to a lot of different things. And so I feel like for that reason, and on the flip side, you've got the six with this kind of East Coast like bar band that are like really fighting tooth and nail for any kind of success and any kind of access and any kind of financial gain. So if anyone's going to be telling the truth, really, it's going to be those boys who are like posturing and kind of peacocking and trying to make things out of thin air, whilst Daisy is more the things she places value on. I think she'd be less, she's got less to hide in terms of like, she doesn't need to put up a front and she doesn't need to create someone new. That's successful. It's kind of like she's born into it. She doesn't have much to lose.
She's born into it. She's like, all she has to do is just drive down onto Sunset and she's in the middle of the scene. And she's like hanging around everybody. I think that's something that this book does really, really well, is the like how bands, at least in the US, how bands start out, of like, you've got those East Coast boys that put together a band and they're playing like, they're pulling their bandmates from like the high school band and people that like played at the prom, which we've both read Bruce Springsteen's book. I felt like there were a lot of references, or kind of like that story was pulled a little bit, of like gathering this hometown crew. Tom Petty also. And then they move from Gainesville, Florida, or New Jersey out to Los Angeles, and that's like the magical trip.
It's that it's like the tale is told as old as time, really, in that respect. And I think she I read that Taylor did like read Born to Run, and she watched the Tom Petty documentaries and stuff. But it's that kind of like migration that's like kind of turned into rock and roll mythology, really, as you said, like Springsteen, Tom Petty, and huge amounts of like that Southern California scene, that Laurel Canyon scene, like basically kind of made by people who weren't even native to the city, like Neil Young and Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joni Mitchell, Carole King. Like that's kind of the magic of it. And
they all went there. Well, I think,
Karen.
Well, that's something that you and I have talked a lot about, is like the feeling of like outsider, of like having to go and like prove yourself somewhere, either in America or like for me, like moving here to Los Angeles is like, there's a great motivator in that, of like, okay, we could just stay home and like do our thing and be however big you are back home. But then there's the like, if we really want to make it, you got to go. You got to go to the place, which is equally intimidating, but also like there's something about that fear that makes it that much more real and worthwhile. Did you see this? So there's that Tom Petty story about they show up in LA and he goes to a phone booth to call a record label. And on the floor of the phone booth, there was a piece of paper where someone had written all of the phone numbers for the record labels.
Oh, really?
That was just sitting on the floor of this phone booth, that he was like equally discouraged that like, okay, someone else is already doing this, and they just left this piece of paper here, but also encouraged as like, well, here's this sign, here's this like gift of all these extra phone numbers. Useful.
But then, you're like one of many people.
One of many. Okay, another question for you. So, catching people up, Billy and the band are out on the road. Billy leaves his high school for kind of like hometown sweetheart. As the band is starting to get bigger, they've released a record. They go out on the road, and of course, debauchery ensues, and he's sleeping with everyone and drinking his weight and doing all the uppers and downers. So he starts coming undone. He's still kind of the hero. We've got Daisy Jones, obviously, as one of our heroes, and then Billy, I think, is kind of set up as like the other hero.
The Lindsay Buckingham of it, maybe.
Exactly. What was your take? Billy's like he's married. He's got a kid on the way. He's on the road. Do you forgive him?
I don't really have much sympathy, or like I don't really connect with Billy that much.
Huh.
To tell you the truth, man, I don't connect with any of the fuckers.
Well, it's interesting. This is one of those things, like, having been in bands, you start to feel the tension. Like this book, like when I read it, it like makes me stressed out. Eddie, the jealous guitar player, he's like, ooh, whenever Eddie has like a little dig, I feel myself being like, hey, fuck you, Eddie. This is my band. Like, you sit down. You don't call the shots here.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so good, is because it, like, I think it really captures the like band dynamics.
Yeah, it's there's definitely echoes to our, like, everyone's experience. It's these kind of dynamics that were in the band that were kind of being documented in the 50s and 60s and 70s, which, like, as rock and roll got more successful, and then they just turn into, like, they mesh into like cliches essentially.
Right. Totally.
Like the rhythm section, who were kind of like
a little bit out there.
The guitarist and the lead singer like batting it out for for whatever. And I don't know, Billy. He gives off this kind of like woe is me, tortured lead frontman kind of thing going on. And there's this whole like Camilla character who he gets married to really young, and they do they get within our parameters and stuff. I think she does get pregnant, and it reminded me of like a lot of rock stars who kind of got who became young fathers like super early, like Keith Richards with his son Marlon, and Lennon and Jules, Mick Fleetwood, and he had a couple of kids and stuff.
Oh, really?
I keep on like trying to, like, because I know that Fleetwood Mac are a big inspiration for this. Trying to like, it's been fun to just look through the stories and try and connect up some dots and stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
But I think Billy, more than anyone, it's going back to what you were saying about who's telling the truth and stuff, which seems to be a bit of a theme in the book. Probably, I'd say Billy's probably the least, because he's got the most to hide. He's the one, like, essentially cheating on his wife who's pregnant. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, part of me feels that it's set up. That's the way I feel, of like, get it together, man. But of course, we've got like, the way that this is told, for better or for worse, probably for worse, is like, even still with the like history of rock and roll, is like we still kind of like celebrate all the drugs and the sleeping around. We're still like, I don't know. It's interesting reading this book today, because I think that has worn off quite a bit. When I was a kid, it was like, man, these guys were so cool. They were pirates. They were badass. But like, rightfully so, it's the story has changed. And I agree. I do think that the way that Billy speaks in the book, he's the most cautious in retelling. He's the most balanced. He kind of pauses before saying things about like, I don't want to say it this way, or I'm a little embarrassed about this. It feels like, he's kind of got the most to lose, I guess, because he was the most off the rails. But I haven't given up on Billy yet. At this point in the book, I'm still, because I like his ambition.
But you've read it before.
I've read it before.
No, it's my first time reading it. Daisy Jones and the Six, by the way, if you've just joined us.
Someone's asking if I'm from Texas. No, I'm not from Texas. Sorry.
That would be.
What else are people asking about? I saw someone say that they were really rooting for Camilla, which I think is a great point to touch on.
I agree.
Camilla, the new wife of Billy Dunn, the lead singer of the Six, and she's the mother of Billy's child. I think she is not only the most stable and rational and reasonable character in the book, I also think that Camilla would be the best songwriter if given a chance.
Yeah, she goes through the most shit.
She goes through the most shit, but she also puts it in ways. Well, first of all, okay, she spent 18 hours in labor on her own with just her mother. She's sweating bullets from all the hormones. And all in this, she says, tell him he can start to be a father this second or he's going to rehab. So she's a badass. She's telling Billy how it is. She doesn't care that he's in this band, that he's like famous and taking off and stuff like that. She puts him in his place despite the exhaustion and giving birth and all of this madness. But she just seems the most reasonable. I wonder if it's because she's the only one who's not in music.
Yeah, I was thinking like actually being that reasonable and being that considered probably doesn't make a great songwriter.
Ooh, interesting.
I always feel like the people who are like really well-rounded and very content and they kind of don't wildly veer in either direction of emotional spectrum, I always feel like they I don't know, it depends how you attack songwriting, but in terms of a more modern kind of emotional way of looking at it, maybe they have less. There's this whole consensus about musicians that they have to be kind of fucked up to write good music. Right. Fucked up in many different ways. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think Billy kind of fulfills that role in one of the more uninspiring ways.
Yes, he's totally off the rails, and then of course can be. I mean, that's like what we want him to be. We want him to be. We want him to be a little bit out of control, and it feels like the rest of the band is like, they're worried about him and scared of him, but he's going 60 days. He doesn't see his kid for 60 days, which is intense.
Yeah, very, very intense. And,
but we know,
deals with a huge amount.
But we trust that he's gonna have the songs coming out of this, that he's gonna like, because the band is still on the rise, right? We know this is gonna be one of the biggest bands of the fictional 70s. Yeah. So we know that the trajectory is like heading towards stardom.
Yeah.
So is he gonna stay sober? Is he gonna keep it together?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I can see if these kind of things are signposted so early on in the book, I feel like they're going to keep on coming back with a vengeance and add Daisy to the mix. Right. I mean, Daisy and the Six haven't actually met yet.
We haven't connected those two.
They've got to a point where they've both got like fairly middling careers, putting out first albums that feel like a whirlwind to them, but actually in the grand scheme of things don't do a huge amount. And we're yet to get to a place in the book where these guys meet, and it makes me. Yeah. It's an interesting one where it's kind of it seemed to be much more of an accepted thing in that kind of time, 60s and 70s, where bands would like chop and change and like collaborate with people a lot more easily. That you don't really see now, like. One of my nightmare situations with the Amazons would be like if we did 10 albums and kind of just plateaued and didn't do much in terms of, didn't have a huge amount of success or didn't take any risks or didn't have much to show for it, or kind of just almost carried on the band because of like it kind of financially keeps us going. Like I feel like a lot of bands go probably past their sell-by dates when the time that Daisy Jones and the Six is about, there was a lot more. I was reading, for example, about the story of like the Faces, and they started as the Small Faces, and they had a couple of hits, and then the Steve Marriott, with the lead singer, he jumped into a band called Humble Pie with Peter Frampton, and the Small Faces turned into the Faces with Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart joining the Jeff Beck band, and of course each band goes off and has like this insane I don't know, these insane
Right.
careers, and like have huge albums and go off, and Ronnie Wood obviously goes and joins the Stones. Rod Stewart
Yep.
goes off and has a solo career. And
You think
like,
that age is lost? That doesn't happen so much anymore, that people.
yeah, and I think actually, no, I wouldn't say that's. I think people are missing a trick a little bit. I think it's way more exciting. I mean, some modern examples would include, I guess, Alex Turner and Miles Kane getting together for the Last Shadow Puppets.
Right. We've got, I mean, in the American like indie world, you've got Phoebe Bridgers, and then like Boy Genius,
That was
and
cool.
Connor, and with Connor Oberst in the
What was that project called?
Better Oblivion Community Center. I guess, yeah, maybe it's like, but we're talking like massive, like the biggest stars of the day. I wonder if because if like something has to do with like everything was so.
Cricket Vultures, true.
Right, everything was so contained or like localized. In the 70s, it was like Los Angeles, New York, London, and like that was it. So like everyone's going to be bumping into each other. Now, I think in a beautiful way is you can have artists in Denver and Kansas City and Seattle, Portland, be able to have real careers and jump around. Something that I think about that you and I have talked about before that I always think is interesting is the way that bands come up. In the UK versus the US, and we've talked about how like I came up through playing in like cover bands and jam bands, and like we would just book our own shows, like playing background music at sports bars and shit like that, and play for like 4-hour marathon gigs and stuff like that. You guys didn't have that, which still fascinates me.
Yeah, it's the live music band scene really is just kind of like based around originals, and there isn't that kind of. Now, when we did South by Southwest in Austin for the first time, and walking down 6th Street was like, whoa, because there's all of these really great, like amazing musicians, like really great musicians, just smashing out covers like in all these bars and stuff. We just don't have it to the extent of the States. So that was a real trip seeing that, but there's not that kind of grounding of musicianship. There was, of course, you had like the Beatles and play and all those underneath doing the Cabin Club and that kind of scene.
So how did you guys
think it's as much of a thing?
How did you like? I don't understand though. Like how? So you played when you guys played your first shows. It was like you had to have a whole set of originals, and it was like a show.
Yeah, it was. If anything, like really, really grassroots. I'm thinking like 2009, 2010 here. At a push, we'd have 1 or 2 covers, but it would mostly be originals, essentially.
What was that show? What was those like first shows? Where were they?
Well, they would be in Reading, and then a place called the Rising Sun Arts Centre.
Cool.
And then our big one in London was at a place called Catch 22 in Shoreditch, and we played to no one. No, my cousin was there, and my parents, of course, who like followed us around when we were like 15, and they would come to all the shows. But yeah, we were playing like our own tunes, and I remember we played a couple of songs, one of which turned into like stuck around for a while and became a song, an Amazon song that was on the first record called "Stay With Me," which I think it starts the first record, and that's like a couple of like riffs or a couple of like vocal melodies like kind of just stuck around, but they were played at that first gig in like 2010.
Yeah,
a decade ago.
That's crazy. Like I remember in college, well, like being bands in high school, and we would play like there was another band from another high school that like had a bit of a following from their high school, and like they asked us to come play with them. But then in college, like we would play in the summers, we would play like sports bars. And there would be like, we'd be set up in the corner. They'd just move like the tables out of the way. And there would be like 7 televisions above us. And people would be like drinking their beers, just kind of like looking just above us at whatever game was on the TV. But it was like, that felt like a very American way of kind of coming up of like,
makes me think of Springsteen, and makes me think of the Six, and makes me think of that East Coast kind of, you know, cut your teeth, like become a great band. Otherwise, people will throw pints of beer at you, or you know, whatever, or just plain ignore you.
Right, exactly. Just totally. I mean, I remember fighting because we played for like 3 hours and 50 minutes straight, and fighting because we were like, we're done. We've already repeated like 3 or 4 songs because we've got nothing else to play. And the manager fought us and was like, no, if you don't play for another 15 minutes, like, I'm not giving you money. And
how much were you paid for those kind of sports bar gigs?
Probably like $150.
Right.
Maybe $200. Split between 4 people, driving in 2 cars, like an hour and a half. It was ridiculous. But that was like, that felt like making it. I mean, I feel like there's so much of that. Like, I think part of it is because we grew up on the like rock and roll lore. Is that like, if you're playing a show at all, or if you're like making any money, like I still have the stubs from like the envelope with like, your band made, you know, there were 19 people there, so you made, you know, $70. I still have those stubs because it feels like, yeah, we did it. Like we totally made it. And the same thing in this book. It's like they moving to LA, they're like, we were on our way. And there's a great quote about like, I think Graham says in the book that the like being at the peak of success doesn't feel nearly as good as the climb, the potential.
100%.
1,000% of like you.
Dude, where is that in the book? That was such. I really that really resonated with me as well. Like the whole like, holy fuck, a fucking songs on the radio. Shit, like that is so. Like when everything's kind of happening for the first time, you play Glastonbury for the first time, you sign the record deal, and you feel like you're like on top of the world.
I've got it. He says, let me tell you the sweet spot for being in rock and roll.
Yeah.
People think it's when you're at the top, but no, that's where you've got the pressure and the expectations. What's good is when everybody thinks you're headed somewhere fast, when you're all potential. Potential is pure fucking joy. Warren says that. Warren, the drummer.
Who's Warren again? Oh, the drummer.
Warren's a drummer who's like he's like the comic relief. He's the one who like moves onto a boat. And he's like always tripping face and is kind of losing his brain. But what a like powerfully true statement that it's like
strangely profound for a drummer.
Strangely profound from a drummer, and especially from Warren. What else? Warren's the one who, when they're deciding the band name, he says part of the brilliance of the name was how close it was to the sex. I don't think anybody ever talked about it. It was so obvious there was no need to put a finer point on it, which everyone else disputes. From what I remember of the rest of the book, Warren is kind of an idiot.
Yeah, right. It's like one of those like characters where they say bullshit for the most of the time, and then they come out with one profound statement.
One of those beautiful lines. Does your book have the lyrics to the song in the very back?
The song? Let's have a look. This newly became
paperback.
Yeah, paperback. So, oh yes, fantastic.
See, this is another thing about this book that there's so many moments in this when they talk about other bands where they weave through, for those who haven't read it, they weave through like talking about, real bands.
Mm-hmm.
And then they talk about fictional bands. Mm-hmm. And you kind of don't know where the line is. Like Daisy is dating one of the singers of another band, and she writes the song Tiny Love for him, or like writes the chorus. And that's like, they give you the lyrics and you're like, that sounds like a great song. Like I'm here for it. I think it makes it authentic.
So surely they'll be using that as like material for the Amazon series. As I said right at the beginning of the stream, if you've lasted that long, they're making it into an Amazon series. It's like 13 parts, co-produced by Reese Witherspoon. And you'd think that surely they're gonna have people writing the music and using those lyrics.
Well, I'd heard that Blake Mills is doing the music for it. Which is like this. Damn, that's going to be incredible. But I really do think that like the band dynamics feel real and genuine. We haven't gotten into the like record label dynamics, which I think are interesting too, of like how the artists are dealing with their labels. But the songs feel good too. That's always like where these type of movies or shows like totally die, is that the songs kind of suck. But
it's
also
such a fine line.
You've seen Almost Famous, right?
Of course.
Great film, great music too. Like
really,
fever dog, scratching at my back door.
Exactly, it's actually pretty damn good.
So good.
Well, we'll see what it's. I mean, they've got the budget and they've got the MD. As you said, it's Blake Mills, right?
Right.
And they've got the references to a T.
Right. The references are you saying how this was her excuse to listen to rumors, nonstop to write this book. Which, who needs an excuse, right? I mean, that book is or that album's perfect. Like,
oh, absolutely, and all the mythology around that she can loosely base it on. The way she knows would like us to talk about Karen.
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 The keyboard player, so nice they named her twice.
Yes, because she was a total trailblazer. And I was watching an interview with Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she said, I mean, as we said at the beginning, this isn't an old book. This was a book that was written and published last year. And she kind of said in this interview that she recognized that the 70s was such a male-dominated time. That she wanted to carve out a bit of space for like a female point of view, and through Karen and Daisy and Daisy's flatmate Simone and Camilla. We're looking at a whole range of different approaches to the female experience.
It's not just the band-aids or the like groupies or the like annoying wife back at home. There's a real kind of genuine experience and an array of character portrayals. And I think, I mean, it's also like those are the heroes of the book, at least this far. Thus far, it's like those are the backbone. Karen's the reasonable one in the band who adds so many layers musically to the group. Camilla is the one who's the voice of reason and smart and grounded.
The one everyone roots for, really.
Right. Those are the people that you want. And yeah, I mean, all of that, like, I feel like when I was a kid, I totally looked up to all of the like rock icon males and still do. But yeah, it's of course with a heaping of salt that you're just like, all right, these guys were kind of jackasses and definitely not good father figures and definitely not the most celebrated husbands and probably even bandmates too. A bunch of jerks.
I feel like it's a change that we've probably, I can't speak for you, but I personally, a kind of a personal journey that I've been on, really, like in terms of looking back at those, and the 70s and the 60s are definitely home to like my heroes in terms of music, like the likes of Springsteen and the Paul McCartney, but also the probably more notorious in terms of Led Zeppelin, who were obviously the dark princes of the Los Angeles scene, and specifically Mick Wall's biography, When Giants Walk the Earth, of Led Zeppelin. I probably read that about 5 years ago, and the kind of debaucherous, kind of like super male, masculine kind of, and pretty shitty treatment of like the groupies and the women and stuff that is allegedly happened in that book. I don't know. I was probably more accepting of it when I first read the biography, but now I keep on catching myself thinking about it and going like, actually, fuck, man. Like, I don't need. It's really easy to not do that. It's really easy to not sleep with a 14-year-old. It's fucking easy. It's not
right.
hard.
That's
they found it hard not to do that, or they found it acceptable, or I mean, Daisy talks about it right at the beginning of the book. She kind of talks about I don't know, Penny Lane or Laurie Maddox. She talks about Laurie Maddox like right off the bat, and I'm sure that Taylor Jenkins Reid wanted to speak about that because that's such a kind of dark underbelly of that Los Angeles scene.
Right. You have to include it, and I think it is like it's included. Like when the band's on the road, they're talking about sleeping with everybody and snorting everything and drinking everything, and it's like it's not left out, which I think is important because it would be a ridiculously, it would just feel so untrue to like leave that out. But it is presented in a way that you're not like, okay, these guys are cool because of this, which I think is a really smart line to draw.
I think so too. It's much more in keeping with the way we look at it now, but also just like how me and you probably look at it now. It's not like, oh, dude, they're so cool. Like, oh, those were the days, eh?
Right.
Those were the days. It's more like, oh, fucking hell, he's got a fucking pregnant, like, girlfriend at home. What are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing, too, is like seeing this and like how, you know, we've both toured a lot around the country and around other parts of the world. It takes there's one part where the manager is talking about like none of them realized like how the bus always had a full tank of gas because they were all like high as hell and drunk as hell, and the manager's saying like it was the middle of a gas embargo, the gas shortages were crazy, and the manager always had gas in the tank. And it's like that's one of the things I think I definitely had the wrong perception of, that going on tour was going to be this incredibly both musical and like wild ride, which of course it is.
Torturous.
And this isn't a novel idea. Everyone's spoken about this, but like, yeah, I find that I like exercise more when I'm on the road, and I eat better when I'm on the road because it's like, God damn, you just can't keep up. It's so much energy output. That you just like you can't hang if you're. I don't know how they like all of those bands.
Also, remember these motherfuckers are on their first album.
Yeah, right.
They're not that successful. They're like in a band.
Is it a full length? Like, it's not an EP. Yeah, it's a full album. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they're on some sleeper bus. And I didn't think it was like they'll know when they're stopping before they get gas.
Right, exactly. But that's the other thing I think about too, is like back in the day, these bands, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong way to think about it, but when I look backwards, I think like, shit, like those guys, like it feels like all you had to do was have like one album's worth of song, and like people were just getting scooped up. Like there was so much room for bands to kind of take off.
Money.
And if like once a label found you, you were on your way. I'm sure there are plenty of, you know, so many stories of bands that did get signed that didn't make it. Of course, we just never hear about them because they didn't make it. So you don't hear about it.
You get given the time. Like Springsteen had a couple of shots before he did Born to Run.
Right.
God, take your pick in terms of breakthrough albums. It was such a different time in that like it was more of an accepted thing that you commercially break through on your third or fourth album, whilst now it's more of like your mission statement is the first record, and everything needs to happen on the first record, and then that sets the scene for the rest of your career. Whilst like a T-Rex or a Fleetwood Mac, like how many albums were they putting out? I mean, Fleetwood Mac, who you know, Rumors, which this story is loosely based on. I mean, what number album is that? That must be like 8th album, doing all the different lineups and stuff like that.
Right. There was. What do you think it was? Was that there was just like there was more room for people to develop? There was. I don't know. I mean, I guess today it's like if you don't have it on your first record, like move aside, lad. Like there's a bunch of other people already coming in behind you, so like get out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Like it's wild that like Dua Lipa's record that just came out. Like that's crazy that that's her second album. Number one, it's incredible. Number two, it's giant. It is like huge, and it's wild to think that like that's only her second album. That like these days, like people right out of the gate are right on top of shit.
It's so developed and it's so considered and
Right.
it's so. There must have been a point at, I don't know where that kind of, maybe it was like maybe the 80s or the 90s where it was less like we need a record every year. It was more like don't do a record every year, just get the one or two that you do, one that you do every 2.5 years, get that right, and we'll milk it, and take 5 singles off it and tour it for 2 years and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so something I wanted to like. We've got the portrayal of the label, which is always interesting. There's Daisy gets signed. She's elated. She's so excited because she's got this raw talent and doesn't have the songs, or the label says she doesn't have the songs. So we've got like the picture of her being the. I'm trying to think who that is. That like incredible artist that isn't taken seriously, and they're just trying to put her in the box of. They're trying to get her to do like. What's the line about like she was Joni Mitchell, she was Carly Simon, and they wanted her to be Olivia Newton-John or something like that. But she's just like the kind of sex symbol and
like
singer.
Hear the songs, sing the songs, middle of the road.
Right.
When Taylor, the author, wanted to base her on Linda Ronstadt, Joni Mitchell, Carole King, like really strong and really strong female singer-songwriters who had such a vision. And I'm sure Stevie Nicks was like involved in that.
Totally.
But it's like that story about her Daisy's first record is just such an example of that male-dominated industry.
Yeah. Well, and we get the other side of it from like the Six's perspective, and I guess it's their A&R, Teddy Price, who shows up and like takes Billy off tour and brings him to rehab and like checks him in, and there's kind of this like paternal figure for him, which I always think is so interesting, the way that labels are depicted, even in classic rock in general, that the label is like the enemy, and that everything is like, I mean, you get it in Tom Petty's book where they actually were the enemy of like hiding the masters from the recordings because they were expecting the label to come find the tapes and like destroy them or confiscate them.
Yeah.
But I remember when I signed to a record label, and like you come in with all of these notions of like the label is the enemy, and I had this feeling of like they were not the enemy, they were and still are like the most supportive people in the world, and it's like you're robbing a bank and you get inside the vault and the bank tellers are there and like, can we help you? Do you need bags to carry out all this money? But metaphorically,
of course,
I don't make any money. But like the depiction in rock and roll, it's like almost like because we need an enemy, at least in the book, we need some kind of like an antagonist of like, who are they up against? Who are they fighting against? Who are they fighting for? They're fighting for like the everyman working his way up the ladder, and we need the evil empire that they're against. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's like, do we like the label so far? Runner Records?
They seem just pretty record label-y, if I'm honest, in terms of their role. It kind of fits in with the cliches, I think, of that time.
Right.
Probably the cliches that's probably something that has been picked up from documentation and interviews and things like that. I want to know if people have read the book. Has anyone?
There's been a couple of good ones. Yeah, I was going to say, let's open up some questions to people.
Let's hit some Q&As. Let's wrap this up.
Beautiful.
Somehow, it's been 51 minutes.
Look at us.
I only wanted it to be about a 20-minute thing, but
we
just love the sound of our own.
Yeah, someone's asking you what the best Springsteen album is.
Oh, good one. Springsteen record, Born to Run.
Yeah. I go back to it every time. It never gets old to me.
Or The River.
The River
or
also.
Born in the USA. Or Greatest Hits.
Oh wow, that's cheating.
That was my first one. My mum had that.
Really?
And what really fucked me up when I actually got Born to Run the record is that Born to Run isn't the first song on that record, but it is on the Greatest Hits, and it's such a great opening song.
Yeah. Well, but also, what is the first song? It's Thunder Road.
Thunder Road.
Which I think has the most incredible introduction of the screen door slams Mary's dress waist. You know, if you've seen the movies that Bruce Springsteen loves so much, like Terrence Malick, it's like we're pulling through the neighborhood, and we get we're introduced to the characters, which is so good. Someone else saying Tunnel of Love. I'd get behind that. That's a great Springsteen in the 80s. Like we've got synthesizers. Yeah, Natalie's saying Tunnel of Love, which I think is.
But we don't want Springsteen, 90s Springsteen with the goatee and no E Street Band.
Or do we? True. Tunnel of Love is where he and Patty fell in love, though.
Yeah, sure.
We love that on that tour. But another, here we go. Patty was his bandmate that he falls in love with. Mm-hmm. He was married. Bruce was married to an actress. And he leaves the actress for Patty in a giant media scuffle. But we love Bruce and Patty. We love
still going strong.
We love that love story.
Someone talked about the Runaways. That I really want to see that.
Ooh, I haven't seen that.
John Jett.
Other question. Some people were talking about Karen. We talked about Karen. People were talking about Camilla. We've talked about Camilla. Y'all got to read this book.
You got to read this book, lads. Right. I'm thinking next time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a sign of what the book is.
Brilliant.
And I'm thinking big production here, or maybe we could transfer to we could convert to a podcast or something.
I love it. Shelf Isolation, the podcast.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, listen, actually, I think it's we need to kind of keep people up to date with what the bloody book is, I guess.
Right. We'll keep doing it that way. I like that of catching people up, and it's always good springboards. We are not changing books every week.
Why not? Maybe we should.
No one will be able to keep up.
I've got an idea what the next book should be.
Yeah.
So, it's Neil Young.
Yes.
But it's not the big one. It's not Raging Heavy Peace. It's basically it's a collection of short stories about each of his cars, but and it's but apparently it's much more personal than his Waging Heavy Peace, because it's got really personal candid stories about each of his cars, such a Neil Young thing. I thought that could be cool.
I like that a lot. The other one I was thinking was did you ever see the movie Eddie and the Cruisers? It's
Eddie and the Cruisers, no.
It's kind of like a fictionalized Bruce Springsteen rock band saxophone. And there's a good movie. He's got the whole almost like West Side Story look. I didn't realize, someone messaged me recently because I posted about Eddie and the Cruisers as it's a great film, and the songs are actually really good. But there's a book that it comes from of this fictional band that could be interesting. We could also do a film. We could do what's the Tom Hanks movie where they
The Terminal. Sleepless in Seattle.
There's the one where he's got, it's like a band, it's like the Beatles. What's it called? It's called come on people. What is that thing you do? Thank you, Fuzzy Tree Magic, for the win.
That thing you do, mate. I've never heard of that.
This would be great. This would be good. It's easier for people to watch the film too, and that's the film is good. I remember the songs being good. I haven't seen it in a long time, but.
Laura J. Bishop says, really recommend Tony Visconti's biography. I actually really like that as well.
Who's Tony Visconti? Who's that?
Tony Visconti is like one of the big 70s producers. He did T-Rex and Bowie. He was like Bowie's guy, and they did. There's a great video of him like breaking down Heroes. He gets all the stems out for Heroes by Bowie. And he like builds the track up right to the finished thing. It's amazing. I'll actually send that to you after this.
Someone else was asking earlier about music and book recommendations for what else we've been reading and listening to.
Okay. What you've been reading and listening to?
Reading. I've been reading a book called The Overstory, which is, it sounds boring as hell, and that's why I didn't pick it up for a while. It's basically like all of these different stories about trees. But like it's kind of amazing. It's an epic. It's a really big book about like all of these different stories around these people and these trees. It's kind of wild and hard to explain, but that's been good. Slow goings. The other that I have staring at me, I picked up 2 collections of Sam Shepard's plays. Okay. He was one of Patti Smith's really good friends and famous playwright, and he's been in a bunch of movies. And it's I've never read his plays though, but he's one of those people that he's like cowboy cool.
Lovely.
And I've never read his stuff, so I've got those on next on my list. What about you? Listening to you know what I've been listening to? We all love the Paul Simon record, Graceland. That's an incredible record. The record after Rhythm of the Saints, I think, takes everything that Paul Simon does well on Graceland and then makes it even more complex and nuanced and interesting on Rhythm of the Saints. I think that record doesn't get nearly enough credit, as people are like, yeah, he already kind of did this on Graceland, but it is so good, and the songs are so good.
Fuck. Interesting.
That one.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
What about you?
What am I listening to? Oh, I'll start with what I'm reading. I just picked this up. It's called A Short History of Europe.
Wow.
And let me tell you, it's very interesting.
Where does it start?
Oh, it starts with the ancient Greeks, my friend, and earlier.
Love those guys.
Man, I'm telling you, mate, the Greeks are fucking sick. The amount of the Romans were very imperial and very efficient, and they've had a big old empire. But the Greeks really, honestly, they were like between like 3 or 4 philosophers who were all like essentially related, not in terms of blood or anything, but like that they kind of taught each other, like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and all this kind of stuff. Their ideas and philosophies about like just life and the being and humans and that kind of stuff, like still being used today, and like language that, you know, stoicism, for example, is just like a word that we use now, and like, you know, anyway, so it's basically like a short history, and it just like bangs. It's real quick. It's like this is the entire history of Europe. It's very, very short and very, very. I don't like to dwell too much on stuff, or go into depth about stuff that I don't care about. So I like the idea of a long, and like a kind of a linear kind of chronological, like how everything affects each other, like the context of things that are happening now were like, you know, put in place hundreds and thousands of years ago.
That's good. I mean, I think about that in terms of like the poetry classes and literature classes I had in school, where it's like you have to teach it alongside history, because otherwise it makes no sense. Like the Clash makes no sense unless you like understand what is happening in the UK around the time of the Clash, or, you know, all of these bands. It's like you have to understand the political environment with which they're operating in.
100%.
Cool. That's sick. That also feels like very rock and roll too. Is like mythology has always been in
Greats and you know, the Pope and the Holy Roman Empire and all that shit.
Rock and roll.
I find at this time of existence, this very strange time, I find the like voices like Lennon and the Beatles and Dylan and Bowie and the band just make the most sense at the moment. They come from a time when people look to. They come from a time where people bought records because they cared about what musicians thought, and the musicians drove the culture.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and also there's I've been listening to two kind of different periods. One is this kind of wartime big band or like croonery stuff.
Yeah.
They've been playing a bit of that on the radio in England.